For more, we can cross to Rotterdam. Daniel Trottier is an associate professor in the Department of Media and Communications at Erasmus University, co-author of Digital Media, Denunciation and Shaming, the Court of Public Opinion. Thanks for being with us here on France 24.
Thanks for having me, François.
When you look back, before there was an internet, there were game shows in Japan where contestants had to endure horrible things. You had the MTV television show Jackass, where people loved watching people in pain. Is this any different?
In this case, I mean, you have this sort of prolonged relationship in terms of abuse. I would see this much closer to the early 2000s, the video series Bum Fights, where homeless people were paid to harm themselves and each other. So they were paid, there was a transaction, but there was obviously a sense of distress and abuse of power to make that footage.
What does it say about, is this a story about the people producing this show, or is it a story about those watching the show?
I mean, the whole incident is very shocking. So the idea that, I mean, this is the worst possible outcome in terms of people and platforms alike doing whatever it takes to build an online following. But of course, the audiences, as we learned, are not just passive, that they were playing an active role in terms of providing money, providing commentary, in other cases also sharing with each other, notifying the police. So I think the terrain's much more complicated than what we would have seen 20 years ago.
French law, 1995, French High Court evoking the notion of human dignity in banning what was so-called dwarf tossing competition. Again, why did this happen, even though there are laws on the books against it?
Somehow we've lost track of dignity. So I'm glad to hear this word being used in this context. And I think, again, this logic of if it gains a following, whether that's a shocked and repulsed following or one who's very enthusiastic about it, especially as we just heard on this sort of Wild West platform that compared to its competitors, not only provides more money to content streamers, but also has less regulation. I think this is going to cast a very long shadow over these platforms, but when you look at it from that perspective, you know, it's shocking. That's not controversial, but that it came to this point, that aspect is not so surprising.
It's early days yet. We don't have an autopsy at this point. We don't know why he died. We don't know what his actual mental condition was, since he refused to undergo tests. What we do know is that two of the protagonists on this show were held briefly, were charged, and then there's still a criminal probe ongoing. We know that it was suspended for 1 month. From this platform Kick, which is based out of Australia, and then it's back. What does that tell you about the times we live in?
I think, you know, being as charitable as possible, the platforms and everyone who had an oversight position was probably overwhelmed or maybe not taking it seriously. But I think, again, the sort of underlying logic of, you know, controversy, shock sells in some capacity, and there's always going to be a platform that's on that cutting edge, so to speak. I'd like to hope that the seismic impact that this has will make that more difficult in the coming years. But I think in that sense, it's shocking and actually not so shocking at the same time.
Is it, in your research, harder? Are authorities overwhelmed? In this case, this is more akin, and you sort of touched on it, to a streaming site like Twitch, which has a wide audience. How hard is it for authorities to keep an eye on this stuff?
Compared to 10, 15 years ago, it's actually easier in the sense that there are precedents, judges, courts, governments have a better sense of this technology. It's a bit like being on a treadmill where if you stand still, the technology sort of moves on and overwhelms you. But in terms of having a legal presence in different countries, at least for the bigger players, it should be, we should be heading in the right direction. But then if you have these novel platforms, and what makes them unique is that they are less regulated almost by design. Yeah, it's, again, not surprising that such a shocking event can happen.
Again, it was my question at the outset about how humans enjoying a spectacle of cruelty. Well, that goes back to the Roman circuses in ancient times. But in this case, when we talk about this notion of dignity, is it also because people feel kind of detached from it all, that this is all happening virtually and no longer in the real world?
Yeah, I think with digital media in particular, it's all too easy for audiences to develop a bit of a cynicism, and when they see someone in distress, either ignore it or even have a laugh of that at that abuse. And this doesn't concern AI, but I would almost say that with that onset of artificial intelligence, people might become less willing to take such footage seriously, lest they be fooled by a revelation that it was AI generated. So that sort of detachment from reality, even if we know the names, even if we know the backstories, somehow, yeah, we're dealing with these kind of these countervailing forces.
One final question, Daniel Trottier, do you find that humans are becoming more cruel than they were?
I think we often underestimate the historic perspective if we look back 100 years or even not so far back. So my hope is that the shock that this has triggered is going to bring about more conversations about not only how to prevent these worst possible outcomes, but to think about dignity alongside other fundamental values. So yeah, I hope the pendulum swings in the right direction as a result of this.
Daniel Trottier, so many thanks for speaking with us from Rotterdam, excuse me.
Yeah, thank you very much.